A lot of people look at this vaccine trial and say, a Russian vaccine? I'm not going to try that. What do you say in response to that? Because you've had your whole family vaccinated. How do you know that this is safe?
Well, first of all, we really focused our vaccine on the safest platform out there, which is called human adenoviral vector platform that has been tried for decades. And frankly, that is really one of the big area of confidence, because some of the other approaches out there are monoval approaches that haven't been really tried out. And secondly, we really believe countries need to test for themselves. And we are proud of cooperation with UAE, who've always been really at the top of fighting COVID, have really had great policies to fight COVID. And the fact that they want to look at the data, to look at how it works, is very impressive and very pragmatic, because we are dealing with the worst epidemics ever. And I think countries need to be pragmatic and have portfolio approaches to vaccines. Try different vaccines and not just make a bet on one vaccine, but have several vaccines in the portfolio.
When you think about this a bit more broadly against this sort of panacea of history, it's no stretch to look at this with regards to potentially the 21st century space race, because all of these names really call to mind what we were seeing in the 1960s with the Sputnik, with putting men on the moon, that race to space. It's extremely political. And at the end of the day, one wonders how difficult it's really going to be to bridge those gaps. There's already a conversation, of course, with regards to the United States and whether Americans should have preferential treatment with regards to getting access to this vaccine. Can you tell us how this vaccine is going to be distributed? Will some countries get preferential treatment, or will this go to market immediately globally?
So first of all, we really need to depoliticize vaccines. I think we really underestimate how bad the virus is, and we see more and more cases of reinfections around the world. And if there are more and more cases of reinfections, basically it's another ball game, it's another ballpark. And I think people will understand that the virus is even more serious than they thought before. And that really requires for depolitization of vaccine efforts. We will submit our data on our vaccine to the European regulator, for the example. We are willing to work with all of the nations, including the US. And frankly, we are very much constrained now by production capacity. We have around 1 billion doses of requests. We only have capacity now for 500 million doses we can manufacture in a year. So basically, we will be working with countries who already submitted requests. Right now, countries who are coming to us just now, we already are talking to them that we can only supply them with the vaccine around March, because lots of orders have already been placed. So we need to work together to depoliticize and also to increase global production capacity for different vaccines.
Hi, Kirill. It's Dan here in Dubai. To Hadley's point earlier, though, you have to point out that the general public still doesn't know whether the Russian vaccine is safe or if it works. So why should the public trust the safety and efficacy of the Russian vaccine candidate? And what do you make of criticism that would suggest that perhaps Russia hasn't been transparent enough with some of the findings of the trials throughout the process of this vaccine development?
Well, obviously, we wouldn't be doing clinical trials in UAE and other nations if we didn't believe that the vaccine is safe and efficient. And already 40,000 people are participating in Russian post-registration trials. More than 12,000 people already received the vaccine. So we are not talking about any faith. We are talking about statistics. We are talking about data. We are talking about the Lancet article. We are talking about full transparency on our data. And by the way, one of the CROs we have advising on the trial in Russia is a US CRO. So again, we are completely transparent and open. There is very negative narrative in some of the Western nations. And frankly, we feel it's very sad, because basically it doesn't allow people to have an honest information on our vaccine. And UAE has a very different approach. For example, they actually had a Russian citizen, 70-year-old citizen, who tried vaccine in Russia, and they tested his blood in UAE. They saw the IgG levels, the antibody level of 10, which is very high. Above 1 is already considered very high. Typical person very sick with COVID just gets 6. So we all need to be very practical and stop this rhetoric of trying to paint each other's vaccines black. It's very unhealthy, it's very unethical, and very unproductive.
So what hurdles do you need to pass through next in order to have this vaccine approved? And to a broader point as well, importantly, how are you going to produce enough to meet demand?
Exactly. So we are basically going to have clinical trials in several other nations, and we will combine data from Russia, from UAE, from India, from other places, and so that that data can be shared with all of the nations. And we built manufacturing partnerships with India, Brazil, China, Korea, several other nations. But as I said, we need to increase capacity. We are working very closely with CEPI, with other international organizations, WHO. And I think, again, it's a global issue and capacity is a problem. So we all need to work together to make sure the different vaccines can be delivered. And again, as I said, we cannot be the only solution. Countries need to have portfolio approach to vaccines, Russian vaccine, other vaccines, and we can only do it together. Not one vaccine can be the ultimate solution. The world needs portfolio of vaccines.